If you've been paying attention to geopolitics in the Middle East over the past year, you should be well aware by now that Israel is legitimately one of the most evil nations to exist, not just in our lifetimes, but in all of human history. Not only have they been an apartheid state for decades, but now they're engaging in a brutal, genocidal ethnic cleansing campaign. No matter how many thousands of toddlers and babies Israel murders, there will always be an endless stream of journalists who will shamelessly repeat IDF propaganda in order to whitewash their favorite ethno-state's endless stream of war crimes. Every time one of these journalists attempts to defend the indefensible, they need to be ruthlessly beaten rhetorically by the truth, which the GOAT John Mearsheimer does expertly in this debate.
Well, maybe also a little bit about the conflict between Israel and Hamas, because I know you guys have opposing opinions on that one. Because, John, you've said on multiple occasions that Israel's committing genocide. Is that correct?
Oh, sure. I mean, Amnesty International has said that. Human Rights Watch has said that. The International Court of Justice has said that there is evidence to make a plausible case at this point in time. All sorts of individuals have said that. Omer Bartov, who is an Israeli himself and who's one of the leading scholars on the Holocaust, has said that. I do believe it's a genocide. And if it's not a genocide, it's mass murder.
That's
great opener. I mean, pointing out the Amnesty International report, the Human Rights Watch report. I mean, if you want knowledge on whether or not something's a genocide, wouldn't you look to human rights organizations? Aren't they the ones that would have an idea of if grave human right violations are occurring? So, and also the ICJ, ICCA stuff. So yeah, I think it's a good opener. I don't really think you can respond to this as a, like, I don't think there's a single counter argument that is logically sound when you start saying that these third party like organizations are like lying or they're anti-Semitic. Like, that's really the only counter you can have to this type of argument. And so let's see what he says.
Based on what exactly, John? On which data? Because the data are coming from, Hamas and from out of Gaza. So how can we trust them? How do we know that this is actually taking place?
Now so John quotes Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, ICJ, and then he's like, those are Hamas numbers. Like, he's programmed. He is just programmed by Israeli propaganda to just, someone brings up the amount of dead civilians, Hamas numbers. It's from Hamas. Well, Hamas is more trustworthy than the IDF, bro, or any Israeli government spokesperson. So I don't know what this point is meant to do. And it's especially funny when you know that Israel intentionally cut off journalists from going into Gaza. So they can cut off the journalists going in, and then the only ones there are Palestinians. And then since they're Palestinians, you can call them Hamas. It's a beautiful little trick. But it's 15 months later, and this guy's still repeating these arguments.
Oh, I think that the data which is coming out from Hamas underestimates the numbers. The New York Times just had a big story. The Hamas numbers are actually too low. Furthermore, you, I think, should look at the Amnesty International report. You should look at the Human Rights report, these two reports on Israeli genocide. Those reports are filled with data that make the argument that this is a genocide. This is not a superficial charge that these prestigious human rights organizations are making. These are well-documented studies. And furthermore, if you look at the brief that the South African government filed before the International Court of Justice, this was in December of 2023, late December 2023, it's filled with evidence to support the charge. But if you don't want to call it genocide, that's fine. What do you call it? Mass murder? Is that your term? What's the term?
No, it depends probably on where you start. If you start from the from the idea that Israel has the right to defend itself, and that is the October.
Jesus, dude. I mean, he just is speed running IDF talking points. Israel has a right to defend itself. October 7th. Jesus.
The 7th. Was a massacre and was a disaster. And
hey, maybe you won't get October 7th if you don't run an apartheid state. Have the Israelis thought of that option? You don't have to run an apartheid state, and then you won't get violence from the people you are dominating. That is an option.
Israel had to react, and and that fighting an urban war against a guerrilla or terrorist organization that hides in between civilians, it's a very difficult task, isn't it? And then you risk also hitting civilians and killing civilians. And I mean, as a realist, probably this is a fact that I would accept, that urban war, this comes with urban warfare, where terrorists are hiding between civilians in schools, in basements, in hospitals. And but let me ask you, how do you fight a war like this without also killing civilians and hurting civilians?
This guy's just a fucking idiot. I mean, no offense, dude, but like, just the most basic knowledge of what the Israelis have been doing shows that they're not going after Hamas. They say they're not even going after Hamas. They say they're trying to inflict civilian casualties. Like, this guy's living in La La Land.
Well, Veer, just on the point that Israel has the right to defend itself, especially given what happened on October 7th, nobody denies that, right? Of course it has the right to defend itself. Every country has the right to defend itself, but that's not an interesting issue. The question is how you go about defending yourself. Just because you're attacked and you're defending yourself doesn't give you the right to execute a genocide. I think you would surely agree with that. Well, the question here
But how do you go after Hamas?
Yo, bro really inhaled. He's like, do I agree with that? I don't know.
Then
They really, like, they think this question is such a gotcha. Well, how would you go after Hamas if you got attacked? Not by carpet bombing. How about we start there? Not by withholding food and water. Like, those are two pretty clear-cut genocidal things to do. Like, you can just not do those things.
Well, you go to great lengths to concentrate on targeting Hamas and doing what you can to minimize civilian casualties. And if you look at what the Israelis have been saying, and if you look at what they have been doing, they're not interested in minimizing civilian casualties. They're interested in maximizing civilian casualties. And they're basically interested in driving the Palestinians out of Gaza. This is an ethnic cleansing exercise. And what the Israelis thought they could do was they thought they could murder large numbers of Palestinians and drive them out of Gaza. And they thought they could starve them to death and use that as an instrument for driving them out of Gaza as well. If you look at the damage they have inflicted on Gaza, it goes well beyond the claim that they were interested in going after Hamas, and that this is just collateral damage. They've destroyed virtually every university or college in Gaza. They've been tearing up cemeteries. They've been destroying libraries and mosques. They've been shooting up hospitals. There are hardly any functioning hospitals in Gaza. They've not been letting in aid in the form of food, gas, and water, and medicine in anywhere near the sufficient amounts to keep large chunks of the population.
Well, there's different stories on the aid getting in or not getting in, and and by whom is sabotaging the aid getting in.
This is one of the most embarrassing Israeli talking points. They say that Hamas is the reason why the food, like, they don't have food, when literally everybody else is saying, no, Israel isn't allowing in food. They say that Hamas is the reason why there's a lack of food. It's just, it's insane, the propaganda that they got, and they actually get, like, dumbasses like this guy to repeat it.
So there's different narratives on what's happening.
There's an Israeli narrative, and then there's the narrative from all the people in the United Nations and the aid groups that are in there as to what's happening. And those two narratives that are at odds. And the question is, who do you believe? And I wouldn't believe the Israelis.
Well, I would not intend to believe UNRWA, which is, also...
Jesus, this guy, one after the other, just every single talking point. John says they're third-party people. He's not specifically talking about UNRWA. There's a lot of other ones. There's a lot of people there. And this guy's like, well, UNRWA is collaborating with terrorists. Because, there were some of them that, contributed to October 7th. This guy is just immersed in the Israeli propaganda. It's insane.
Collaborating with Hamas. So there's, let's say, that we disagreeing on parts of this story, probably.
Well, it's not just UNRWA. It's all sorts of aid organizations that are in there who say that the Israelis are making it almost impossible to get the essential foodstuffs and medicine and water and gas or fuel into Gaza.
But anyway, we agree, of course, on that. That's a disaster what's happening over there, and there will be, like any conflict, there will be an end to this conflict also by negotiations. We see this perhaps happening now. But what kind of future will Gaza have? What kind of future will the Palestinians have after this war? And where will it be? I mean, where will the Palestinians live?
Well, I think there are two dimensions to this. One is we should talk a bit about the ceasefire, and that's now being negotiated, and it looks like it will be implemented on Sunday. And then we should talk about the long term, whether the ceasefire holds or not. First of all, the ceasefire is a huge defeat for Israel. It's really quite remarkable.
El Israel, you guys fucking suck. You can't even beat this emaciated rebel group that you have been sieging for decades. You can't even conquer Gaza? You've leveled it and you can't conquer it? It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. You didn't achieve any of your goals and you have to do a ceasefire? That's really embarrassing. You have the number one world superpower at your beck and call and you can't defeat a fucking ragtag group in sandals with AK-47s. Yikes. That's embarrassing.
Remarkable. At the end of the ceasefire, the Israelis have agreed to leave Gaza. They will leave Gaza completely. Furthermore, Hamas has not been defeated. And in fact, there are all sorts of articles in the Israeli press, that say that Hamas has reconstituted itself and it is as formidable a fighting force today as it was at the start of the war on October 7th. This is really quite remarkable.
But it's difficult to believe also.
Pardon?
This is also difficult to believe. Where will they get their weapons from? I mean, there's thousands of them killed. The system of tunnels is at least a big part has been destroyed. So how can Hamas be the formidable force that they were before this all started?
You can go to the Jerusalem Post. You can go to the Israel Times. You can listen to Tony Blinken talk. And they basically said what I just said to you. This is not something I've made up. Right?
I understand. It's the Israeli newspaper, the Israeli media who's saying this. Yeah. But I think for us, it's difficult to believe, to state this as a fact.
Why should it be difficult for you to believe? There are huge numbers of young males in Gaza, and you can kill a couple thousand Hamas fighters, and there are plenty of young males who can replace them.
Yeah. Israel's great strategy. Murder 100 people to get one Hamas dude, and then somehow they don't think that all of the people whose family was murdered to get that Hamas dude won't just join Hamas. It's so stupid.
In terms of the weaponry it's involved, Hamas relies on unsophisticated weapons. It's not like they have tanks and airplanes, right? They rely on anti-tank weapons. They rely on rifles, explosive devices, and so forth and so on. and they have plenty of them. They can build them inside of Gaza. And furthermore, there's all sorts of evidence that there's lots of unexploded Israeli ordnance lying around in Gaza that Hamas is using to make bombs that are very effective against the Israelis. So the argument that people are making, and again, this is not me, this is people inside of Israel who are loyal to the government, that Hamas is in very good shape today. But again, it's not only that, it's the fact that the ceasefire agreement, assuming that it's implemented, calls for Israel to leave, to abandon the Philadelphia corridor, which is the line between Gaza and Egypt that the Israelis have said they have to occupy for the long term. Now they've agreed to leave. They've agreed to allow food and other kinds of aid to come in. They've allowed Palestinians to return to their homes, which means that the effort to ethnically cleanse North Gaza, which looked like it was going to happen a few weeks ago, is not going to happen.
That is probably the most soul enriching part of the ceasefire, is that the people who were cleansed from North Gaza get to go back to their homes. I was really nervous that they were actually going to be able to succeed and just drive all of them out, and knowing that they get to go back even if their home is rubble it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling that evil didn't win, ethnic cleansing didn't win, genocide didn't win. It's really powerful. I saw lots of pictures of them going back to their homes and everything's destroyed, but it's good that they're allowed to go back. It's good that Hamas kept together long enough to make the Israelis give up and let them go back.
Because all those
what happened? What made the Israelis do this? Agree with this?
Trump?
No, well, I think Trump mattered for sure.
Shout out
the
Trump.
other thing is the Israeli army is in real trouble, right? The fact is the Israelis, number one, cannot defeat Hamas in Gaza, right? Number two, they have been suffering severe casualties in Gaza. Third, the Israeli army is in real trouble.
I think he meant 600.
They're having great difficulty getting reservists to report for duty. Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, had a big story on this the other day, the state of the Israeli army, and you see it in other media outlets in Israel as well. The army is in trouble. Remember, the army is in Syria, the army is in southern Lebanon, the army is in Gaza. This is an army that's not used to fighting long wars. It's not constituted to fight long wars, and it's been fighting in Gaza since October 7th, 2023, and it's, again, now involved in other places like Syria and southern Lebanon as well. So the army is running out of gas, and Hamas is alive and well. So it makes sense from Israel's point of view to cut a deal, and that's what they've done. But that's just the short term. The question is, what's the long term? And the long term is Israel will continue to exist as an apartheid state. And the problem that it faces is that more people around the world understand that Israel is an apartheid state. And they also understand that Israel has executed a genocide, or if you want to use your view of it, mass murder, not a genocide. This is a huge stain on
fought
Israel.
The war. In my words, it will be Israel fought the war.
Oh, what war? Okay. So you think that Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International are doing what? What do you think is going on when they accuse Israel of genocide? You think they're just anti-Semites?
No, but I think, well, as I said, I think it's a very complicated way of fighting a war in an urban zone like this, where terrorists are hiding in schools and in hospitals, etc. And yes, probably there will be disproportional number of civilians getting hit.
Yeah, no shit, dumbass. No one's fucking like debating that point. That urban warfare will probably have more civilians than like two warring armies on a battlefield, but that's not the problem, dumbass. Like we've done horrible shit, bombing like people in urban environments for decades, and we haven't got accused of genocide. I mean, there might have been like one or two, but I can't think of them. Like something about Cambodia was bad, but yeah, this guy's a fucking moron. I mean, no offense to this guy, but dude, Amnesty and Human Rights Watch, they're not just like, they're not making up bullshit. Like they're relaying like what they're saying. Like I think some people just, I don't know. Some people, I mean, I was like this before. I was like this until I watched a Mearsheimer lecture, and he helped me understand why it was a genocide. So I think maybe this guy just hasn't got exposed to good information, because really it's quite limited, because our governments don't want us to hear all this stuff, and because Israel's an ally, quote unquote. So yeah, I can't hold it too much against him, but it is kind of infuriating to listen to.
And killed also, but I don't see any other way to fight this war. But this is difference of opinion how to deal with this problem. More interesting is what you were saying about the long term. How to evade something like this to happen again in the long term, and that's what would interest me.
Well, you're going to have, as I said, the continuation of an apartheid state. Israel's going to remain an apartheid state. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what are the oppressed people in that apartheid state going to do? And the fact is, they're going to continue to resist.
Because then we're talking about the West Bank and Gaza.
West Bank and Gaza.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing you want to remember is that the number of Palestinians inside of Greater Israel is roughly the same number as the number of Israeli Jews. By my count, you have about 7.3 million Israeli Jews and 7.3 million Palestinians inside of Greater Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
The question,
not Greater Gaza, but the whole of Israel, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Greater Israel.
Yeah,
yes, inside Greater Israel. And the question is, given those numbers and given that you have an apartheid state, where does this all lead?
Well, it's a demographical time bomb for the Israelis.
That's right. And that's why they were trying to ethnically cleanse Gaza. That's why they were murdering all those people, contrary to what you said. Mm-hmm. You want to understand that the Israelis understand that they live in an apartheid state. The Israelis understand what happened to South Africa. They understand that an apartheid state is not sustainable over the long term, and they have to fix the problem. And the only way they see to fix the problem is to drive the Palestinians out of Gaza and out of the West Bank. And if they can't do that, they'll murder them all.
Right. Paul.
Okay, guys, I think we can agree to disagree on this particular topic, but it's very interesting to see you guys debate this issue in a very well-mannered way. Let's try to wrap up. We've been talking for almost an hour. Last time when we ended, John, you only had negative.
Okay, that's all of it. Yeah, I think this guy got destroyed, honestly. It's kind of an embarrassing performance. But I mean, you shouldn't be trying to debate Mearsheimer. Mearsheimer's the GOAT. Like, come on, you should do your research, know that he's the GOAT, and at least listen to like some discussions he's had on this. Like, it almost sounded like he hasn't listened to any, because he's just giving out Israeli propaganda, like one after the other. But yeah, L, this dude, W, John, as usual. If you like this video, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Goodbye.